Okay. There's a letter. Which one's for me? This one here in the middle. Okay. Okay, take care.
Hello.
Hi, darling.
Hi, sweetheart.
It's lovely to see you. You look well. Sorry, you're still muted.
Only temporarily.
Only temporary.
Oh, you look so beautiful in that wonderful background.
Yeah, this is you have to visit us sometime.
Oh, God, when this dreadful COVID madness,
Oh my
I
God.
should be there like a flash. Are you
Yeah,
kidding?
I know. It's really, I wonder whether it will ever come to an end, you know?
Well, everything is utterly up for grabs, isn't it?
Yes.
That's where we are.
So this is recorded, but of course, it can be edited. I'll be editing it. So anything we say or anything you don't want in or anything we're just chatting.
Oh no, I will just I'm you know me, I never always say what I mean.
I know you do. I've been listening. I have ordered your beautiful book.
In Goldenmond,
Yes, it hasn't come yet, but I did listen to your introduction to it that you gave on your site,
ah,
which was so helpful actually, because I do feel I feel a lot of, it's not just the dread of what's happening, but I actually
no,
beginning to feel some level of terror about
yes,
what's coming. You know, last night here in our little place in Sebastopol, the lights went out. I was in the middle of a music lesson, actually, you know, something that you do in the normal world. And suddenly the electricity failed. And then I was reading there was this massive storm with dust storms, extreme wind, tornadoes, snow squalls, wildfires, all at the same time going across the Great Plains. So, and I think we just got the end of that event, and you must have got some of that too.
oh yes. Well, we're in the apocalypse, my beloved friend.
Yes.
This is the apocalypse, and it's time. Shall we begin?
Let's begin because um, I just feel people haven't got what's coming and how
No.
irreversible some of it's going to be.
Well, let's begin with that.
Right.
And then we will go into the deep sacred possibilities that this terrible situation offers.
When I was listening to your Kabir Engolderment, your introduction to it, it was so helpful. So I think this, you know, the possibility in the midst of the dismemberment that we're going through.
That's what we need to talk about. And also, what I would love to do when you have the book and have absorbed some of it is that I'd love to do half an hour with you and you choose 4 poems
Oh,
that really speak to you. And you talk to me about how they have given you whatever they've given you.
yes,
Because Kabir is truly the greatest of them all. He is the Everest. He's Bach, you know. He's absolutely unflinching
yes,
on every level, both unflinchingly sober and fierce, but also unflinchingly exalted.
yes.
He knows this is not somebody who's exploring reality. He's speaking from reality.
Yes. Well, the few poems that you introduced us to were so powerful and so, as you say, so to the essence and so real.
So real.
So, dear beloved, what is your prognosis about our sorry state as humanity that we've brought ourselves to this apocalyptic time?
Well, I am so relieved that you said the word apocalyptic because I have been calmly but relentlessly challenging all of the teachers to really tell the truth to humanity now. We have a responsibility to tell humanity that we are now in the apocalypse. This is the apocalypse. And if you can't see it and feel it, you're blind and dead. Because absolutely intractable and unspeakably ferocious crises, all interlinked, are now having a ferocious orgy in the world. We have a COVID pandemic which is clearly out of control. Omicron is only the latest of the varieties of variants, and there may very well be others that are much more deadly being incubated by the staggering ineptitude of our response. The very fact that Africa is largely unvaccinated, that Asia is largely unvaccinated, that we have a whole crazy rash of disinformation that people are insane enough to believe that COVID has been somehow exaggerated and is a secret plot for authoritarianism, all of that. We have that. We have a pandemic. We are clearly in climate freefall. And as we talked a couple of weeks ago, we were both out of our minds with distress at the absolute failure of COP26 to address anything with any degree of seriousness.
But I actually think that more than failing, it was underlining
Right.
the statement of the fossil fuel industry that they are actually putting their foot on the accelerator and they're not paying heed to anything.
Well, immediately COP26 ended, I was informed by my friends in Brazil that deforestation was higher in Brazil than for 15 years.
Yeah.
And it goes on and on. This is insanity. We're psychotic.
Yes.
And then you add to that that there are 1 million species on the edge of extinction.
Yeah.
And you add to that that the whole world economy is extremely brittle and can explode at any moment. And you add to that that there is a huge crisis of authoritarianism rising like a hydra all over the world, and especially in America.
Yes.
My God, we could very well have a fascist government here in the States, the incineration of democracy. And let's face it, just as I wrote in Savage Grace, if we have an American fascism, it will be worse than Nazism, because American fascism will have a servile media of unbelievable reach. It will have weapons of mass destruction, biological and atomic, and it will make sure that there'll be no global unity for any solutions to any of the now erupting global problems. So let's get real about where we are. And I am aghast at the majority of the teachers who are still going on business as usual.
Right.
Business as usual. The world needs to be alerted. And if it isn't alerted, we have no hope. Because it's only by facing this situation, having the courage to really see it for what it is, that we have any hope of rising from the divine depths of ourselves, not only to do something about it, but to go through the kind of rigorous transformation we all need to go through to be strong enough to hold humanity to the possible birth that this great death could be preparing. So
I'm going to pause there because I realize I have got there's something with the mic when I speak, and I've got a better mic. I'm just going to put that in. If you can just hold that thought. Right. I think this will probably, yes. Yeah, so you do feel at the heart of this great terror, this multi-headed hydra, as you call it, on every level that's rising. well, you know, what is the point of salvation? Where is the point of not just whimsical hope, but real edge that we work at to support this possible rebirth and renewing of the story, which clearly has to be an extremely radical remake that wouldn't be surprising for those of us that have been on the edge of exploring and working towards embodying spiritual transformation. But for the mass of peoples that have been indoctrinated into a highly narcissistic, individualistic metaphor that is sort of forever on the teat of consumption, and have been disconnected from a deep embodied spirituality through the misapplication of religious metaphor in traditions. I mean, how do we make such a pivotal turnaround as this great shadow is bearing down upon us unrelentingly and with increasing speed?
Well, I want to turn that question to you, because one of the reasons why I have loved you so much and have such deep respect for you, and why I was so thrilled to help Time to Stand Up get published, is that I know that you're very aware of the intensity of the problem, and the intensity of the problem in Buddhism and in all of the Eastern modalities and in the New Age, obviously. But I also know that you've been working on an answer to that. And so I'd love to hear your answer and dance with your answer. Answer's the wrong word. Your exploration of a possibility, because none of us have answers. We have possible directions.
Well, my journey is really, you know, has been informed by a deep stripping away of the structures around the sense of individual self. You know, that's the whole Buddhist shtick, really. And that has a great place in this exploration, but in a way, it's also seated in a fundamental split that I mentioned in Time to Stand Up, which is a split from the world of matter and the world of spirit.
Right.
It's endemic in all contemporary religious forms, and it's also disembowels the deep feminine and therefore the Shakti energy of radical eros and love and connection and deep compassion that is,
and passion, real passion, divine passion.
Thank you for that piece. Yes, absolutely. So, you know, it's clear to me that if we listen into the heart beneath the cognitive frames of the mind, if we listen, we're listening into a speaking intelligence, and that intelligence is deeply guiding, deeply alive, and deeply awakening us. And I feel, for me personally, that's the place that I refer to. And that's also taken me into a deeper exploration of indigenous knowledge. And,
yes.
and in that, realizing that these are peoples that never lost this deeply embodied earth connection, and that they must be the leading voice at this time. You know, that all of us that have been shaped by centuries and millennia of the kind of this fundamental split that we have embodied through religious metaphor. And
it's an addiction to transcendence, isn't it?
Addiction to transcendence.
It's an addiction. And that addiction has induced a terrible schizophrenia in Hinduism and Buddhism. In the Buddha, I don't find it. And one of the wonderful conversations that I've had with Thanissara over the years has been about how in the original text you can find very clear indications that the Buddha took the body very seriously and embodying the principles of his extraordinary discoveries very intensely. And that it was also about the transformation of the body.
Well, he also wasn't just the internal body, but the external body of systems.
Right.
So he took on the caste system, for example, and overturned it, for which he was nearly killed. So we know that there's a massive precedent there for engaging. But we see this transcendent metaphors, not just in the spiritual realm, but it's highly accentuated in the rational, scientific, conspiracy realm. So we see that encapsulated or demonstrated by these billionaires rushing off to space, burning up enormous amounts of oil in the process as our savior. What more of a completely psychotic metaphor could you get than that, from where we actually need to return and where we need to look? We need to return to this deep connection with an insouled world, with an insouled sacred web of life, which has never really been destroyed in the understanding of indigenous knowledge. It was destroyed very deliberate in our trajectory of the Western world in particular, through this great split.
And not just through this great split, but through something else that I know alarms you as much as it alarms me, which is the search for private liberation. One of the most wonderful things about the evolution of Buddhism, for example, is that the original ideal of purely personal liberation was exploded in the most gorgeous way by the birth of the Bodhisattva awareness.
Yes.
And I remain absolutely enslaved by that ideal. It's the highest ideal we've ever been given in humanity. But I look around at the Buddhist teachers and I look around at the messages that they're giving, and of course the Dalai Lama is a massive exception to this, and I don't see any bodhisattvic penetration. I don't see any announcing of the need to abandon the search for private liberation and focus on becoming someone who is able to pour himself or herself out relentlessly, wisely, calmly to serve the birth of a new world. What are they doing?
Yes, that is a very good question. I think in the Buddhist world, we are massively unprepared for midwifing and responding to the enormity of what we're facing. I think even, just on every level, not only the deepening of the bodhisattva ideal and taking that on very seriously and teaching it and being it, but also, how do we even, the avoidance of even speaking to, the fear of upsetting people's peace, the inability of centers to really consider, as we all must, how are we going to respond in a world of constant crisis, emergency response. That's what we're now moving into.
Well, it's with the centers have become spas for personal peace.
Yes.
That's nothing.
Yes.
They should be incubation chambers for bodhisattvic heroism of spirit.
Yes. I agree with you. And I think one has to break. I think in part, there's, Buddhism has been always subsumed to some degree within. This goes back to its own roots of somewhat compromising itself in relationship to whatever sponsor is around at that time, which is always the local power structure, whether it's monarchy, whether it's kings, whether it's queens, and it is really around the capitalist paradigm. You have to sell this stuff to keep your centers going, and you don't really sell apocalyptic bodhisattva work that easily.
Tell me about it.
Yes. This sort of the more rational scientific approach to individual mindfulness in service of bettering and furthering your company and your well-being, all of which is not to be sniffed at, but it's completely out of alignment with the need.
But it's of absolutely no use in an apocalyptic situation. But let's get back to something that I'd love to ask you to elaborate, because I have loved your work for a long time. And when I came to visit you in South Africa, and that wonderful time we had in South Africa, you and Kittisaru did a very long and gorgeous ceremony for Kuan Yin, a healing ceremony of Kuan Yin. And I was overwhelmed by the power of that ceremony. I went into it, not skeptical, but open, but not expecting anything. And then suddenly this wave of sacred feminine power flowed over the entire assembly. And I'd actually been very sick, and I was healed by it. I have never, in fact, experienced so immediate a healing as I did in that ceremony. And I know that Kuan Yin has become absolutely central to both of yours and Kittisara's practice, and that this ceremony contains enormous relevance for this situation. So I'd love you to talk about how Kuan Yin brings a new flavor of radical healing to the world.
It's a really important question. And I remember that ceremony, I remember that time. And you might be pleased to know that one of my very, very dear friends, Mel Zaki, who's a sacred musician, has since put it to musical score, some of it in such a divine way. So I look forward to sharing that with you. And you'd also be happy to know that we actively promote that in all the centers we teach at.
Oh, I'm so happy.
And actually, there is quite a big movement now, very open and interested in the Kuan Yin Dharmas. And I think it really does meet this confluence of the, the very premise of personal enlightenment is an erroneous premise. Because
right, there's no person to enlighten.
Exactly. So, and I think this deep understanding of not emptiness as in there's nothing there, but emptiness as the teacher that transmitted this ceremony to us, Master Chunhua, would say it means absolutely everything is here.
Right. Purnam Purnamidam, the fullness.
The fullness, which is also in the Avalokiteshvara Kuan Yin, contemplation, is everything is resident intimately in this awareness. Right. So nothing is outside, even the monsters. So what are we to do about that? We can't separate them out. Psychologically, you need to separate things out, boundaries, and we know that work is so important, but spiritually, in reality, that there are no defined boundaries.
Right.
As we see in quantum theory, and we know that the observer and the observer begin to merge and influence and co-create. And so this is the realm of Kuan Yin, is the one eternally listening. Kuan Yin really represents this deep bodhisattva heart.
Right. But a very particular flavor, very particular rasa, because what I experienced in that ceremony is what I can only call soft power.
Yes.
I love Hillary Clinton's phrase, soft power. And when Kuan Yin is present, there is this soft, penetrating, all-embracing, but very precise power of absolutely unconditional compassion that is totally transformatory and healing.
Yes.
And that's why I think your promulgation of Kuan Yin and your building of this ceremony, you're taking it everywhere, is actually supremely important. And I just am so thrilled that you're doing it, and I beg you to continue, because it is one of the most powerful forms of the sacred feminine that I know.
Wow. Thank you for that endorsement. I that's really encouraging, because I could see, and it is magical. There's a magical response.
Magical.
One of the lines in the ceremony is the way and the response are intertwined inconceivably. And it really is talking about this deep intelligence. Kuan Yin starts to merge really with Pachamama, the deep intelligence of earth,
completely.
The speaking world, the alive world of a multi-dimensional cosmology where there are beings, ancestors, spirit beings, elemental beings that are all part of this intimate awareness which we all inhabit. And so
that was very well experienced when we were all together, because we were together in your center in South Africa, which was on a Zulu sacred mountain.
Yes, it was.
And the force of the mountain and the force of Kuan Yin were one force.
Yes.
There. And there was an enormous power of both very grounded and very transcendental healing coming through.
Yes, and that's been one of our main offerings there in South Africa over decades, is doing those ceremonies, doing those mantras, doing those devotions, and the mountain responds. The mountain has let us know in so many ways how responsive it is. And as we even do those ceremonies, often the weather patterns
Yes.
around the mountain respond at very critical moments. These great flashes of lightning
and the rain suddenly poured. Do you remember that at the end of the ceremony there was this absolutely monumental rainstorm, and it felt as if we were being drenched by sacred blessing?
So this is one way, a very vital way, is to actually do ceremony at this time.
Yes.
With this devotion and calling on all these forces and calling on this depth intelligence, which I do experience as the great grandmother, the great mother of all, the great compassion that birthed all, the great merciful one, the great fierce one. So these are the attributes of Kuan Yin's heart. And one could do that anywhere. We could do pilgrimages and do that outside of slaughterhouses. You could do it outside of oil refineries. You could do it, and in a way, it's not a direct attack on the actual, whatever you're doing it in relationship with, but it's an invitation into a whole different way of experiencing and holding our beingness in this world.
I love what you just said, because it's not an attack. It's a healing of all forms of pain and ignorance that drive people to do terrible stuff, as well as healing of the agony that those of us who really understand that it is terrible stuff experience. So it's a comprehensive, all-embracing healing that Kuan Yin is offering, and the mother is offering.
I think as you're saying that, I think at some level, even the worst monsters, and there's many of them now, the most unconscious beings that have enormous power, is not that we don't come up against them and challenge them, which we must politically and in any way we can.
But not with hatred,
exactly.
With deepest compassion, because what you and I, and I'm sure many awake people know, is that if people are behaving like that, and they are, and there is real evil in what they're doing, and they could very well ensure the destruction of the planet, that's true. But if they're acting like that, they are in monumental pain. They're in such psychic suffering that any awake person should be aware of that and should be praying constantly for the healing of that and their release from those terrifying three poisons. The world is burning in the fire of hatred, craving, and ignorance, said the Buddha in the fire sermon. And what terrible fires to be burning in.
Yes.
That's why the Kuan Yin intelligence and the Bodhisattva intelligence is so important, because the Bodhisattva always knows that the darkest and most terrible people are in fact the most secretly afflicted, and he or she is on the earth for them as much as for the awake.
Beautiful. I would love to hear your thoughts about how you understand and feel and experience Kabir talking to this, holding the shadow, holding those that are embodying the means of destruction, like the Ravana character in the Ramayana that has great power, and yet it's ego power. How to transform that with the power of love, light, and healing.
Well, as you know, I've just produced this book in Goldenman. Can I just be naughty and hold it up? In Goldenman,
please do.
Which is 66 timeless poems of Kabir.
I've ordered it. So.
Oh, thank you, darling. And they're these three naughty little yogis.
They look wonderful.
They're totally wonderful, and they were just outside where I was staying in Benares. Kabir is absolutely relentless and ferocious in his critique of all those who choose power and not love. He's unspeakably angry at them, but that anger is always softened by a real heartbreak at what they are doing to themselves. There is a wonderful poem in which Kabir says, look, when Ravana ruled the world, it was all fine, and then he lost everything, and there was absolutely no one to help him at the end. Don't go into this kind of life. Look what happens.
Right.
You seem to have it all, you seem to be able to command it all, but in the end, you have nothing, and you'll only have to come and do the whole damn thing over again. God knows how many times. Are you crazy?
Right.
See the craziness of the lust for power. So, on the one hand, he's got a very fierce denigration of that. But on the other hand, he, like any truly enlightened person, Kabir is the Everest of mystical poets. He knows that people who choose that are committing soul suicide, and that is the worst thing a human being can do.
Yes.
Kill themselves, and that's one of the reasons why Kabir is always screaming, "You idiots, wake up now! Don't you realize you're plunging into a fire that will only incinerate you?"
Yes.
That's what's so noble about his voice.
Yes. That is a very evolved place to come from, when most of us want revenge or want to see that person destroyed, and not really liberated. So to
I
try,
think that is the really disfiguring emotion now, and I unfortunately I see it in amongst many Democrats. It they The way many Democrats talk about Trump actually frightens me, because he's clearly a psychopath. We know that, and he's unbelievably corrupt, and the Republicans are unbelievably corrupt and extremely dangerous. But to exult in his humiliation is to join that terrible mindset.
right,
On the one hand, we need to pursue every just means to bring him and the rest of the thugs to justice. They have to be brought to justice. But can't we begin as deeply awake people to imagine ways in which bringing them to justice could be combined with a rugged compassion for the madness that they've let themselves be overtaken with, and with healing of that madness? Why can't we imagine healing so that the amazing powers of brilliance and intelligence that they have can be then turned to transformative instead of destructive purposes? The West seems incapable of this kind of
well, I think it's
truth.
spirituality that's very much like a judging, revengeful God kind of
Right.
internalize that. But as you say that, because I actually feel quite vengeful sometimes, I would like to see Trump destroyed and humiliated if I'm talking in my lesser self. But I also feel what it does to me is it hooks me into this torturous kind of like relationship dependent on every quirk and turn that a being like that, and or the energies behind that being, that is using that being too, what their
Right.
agenda is. But when I go to the place that you're talking about, which I can do through this deeper contemplative work and
And through
deeper
Kuan Yin, one can get there.
part of the deeper, Guan Yin intelligence and the Pachamama guidance, then there's such an immutable power there that doesn't need to have to destroy anything or seek revenge. It's like things will unfold as they will unfold according to karma. But then there is the liberation to be able to love. And that is the most liberating point of consciousness that I have come across in the face of this enormous shadow. And when I look at all of those that have inspired me, and I like read like people in the midst of the Holocaust and these horrific, nothing like what I'm experiencing in this very comfortable life I'm living, how some of them could bring forth, maybe because of what they were in, this immutable, shining heart. And that's what lasts through time, isn't it? That's what we read about. That's what we
But
hear.
that's what enlightenment means. Did you ever read that prayer? I wish I could quote it. That was found on a piece of paper in Ravensbrück. And the prayer goes something like this: Please, O Lord, show your mercy not just to those of goodwill, but to those of evil will. And remember, when the evil come before you, all the qualities that suffering this horror have brought out in us, the courage, the generosity, the amazing compassion for each other. And when the evil stand before you, remember these and be kind to them.
Oh, yeah.
That to me is the enlightened consciousness.
Mm.
And in a situation that we're in, if you step back, you see that the Trumps and the Bezoses and the thugs and the crazies, all of them are playing a very distinct alchemical function. They're making humanity aware of the lethal power of the shadow that is coming up to be made conscious, to be healed by the sublime heart intelligence of the Divine Mother, Pachamama Kuan Yin. So they're playing an extraordinarily important part. And if we meet them with savagery and vengeance, then everything is lost. But if we meet them with that all-embracing understanding and deep prayerfulness for their liberation, then there is a very deep chance that we'll find our way into a new kind of healing.
Wow. Wow, that's sorry, my mic's going a bit odd, but that's so hopeful, that's so beautiful, and that's so doable for us. We can
It is.
do this.
What else do our lives mean if that we don't do that?
I know.
The Dalai Lama prays every single morning. You know this, and I know this. He's spoken about this many times, and I've been there with him doing this. He prays for the Chinese. He prays with more intensity for the Chinese than he does for anyone else,
Yes.
because he knows just what danger they are in.
Yes. Yes.
And he knows that if he prays from that liberated bodhisattvic heart mind of his for them, there's a chance that they will be shifted within, and all the power that they're using for darkness can be used for light. There is no other way to go approach a situation as drastic as this.
And he does that after listening for decades and decades of people coming over that border, filing past him in McLeod with all the horror stories, imprisonments, tortures, separation, loss. And he still maintains, I mean, he is an emanation of Avalokiteshvara in that way. You know, you can see in this, and with such humor and such lightness, this, I mean, he is such an extraordinary example of finding that power.
He is, you remember from the Vajradhara Sutra, this extraordinary meditation on the bodhisattvic mind and heart. I must rescue all these beings from the stream of samsara. It's not just the good you're rescuing. It's not the Democrats you're rescuing. It's not the ones who agree with you about justice and the environment. You are pledged as a bodhisattva to rescue all beings. Right? I must rescue all these beings from the stream of samsara, which is so difficult to cross. I must pull them back from the great precipice. I must free them from all calamities. I must ferry them across the river of samsara. I myself must grapple with the whole mass of suffering of all beings. To the limit of my endurance, I will experience in all the states of woe found in any world system, all the abodes of suffering, and I must not cheat all beings out of my store of merit. I am resolved to abide in each single state of woe for numerous eons, and so I will help all beings to freedom in all the states of world that may be found in any world system whatsoever.
Wow.
Let us get real about that vow. That means in our situation that we must hold the dark and the evil. We must recognize the darkness and the evil in ourselves, the things that are like these beings in us, and heal them constantly and call for grace for healing. But we must hold them in the deepest compassion and pray for their transformation and never indulge in hatred and vengeance while honoring the need for justice and challenging all the structures of cold evil. That requires a balance of soul that can only come through the deepest sacred practice and through real awakening.
Beautiful.
There is no other option now. And this is what should be being taught in the Buddhist centers. In the Buddhist centers, I believe what should be being taught are three things. That the Bodhisattva vow is the most sublime and the most difficult imaginable. That we are in the apocalypse and that we don't have any more time not to become Bodhisattvas in action. There is no time left. So we must really now stop using the practice as a lovely placebo so that we can be peaceful. That's good, that's the foundation, but we must wake up to the grandeur of what we have really undertaken in taking those vows and incarnate and embody in our stream of consciousness and in the fearless heroic actions on behalf of justice that we selflessly take up.
Wow.
That true vow.
Thank you so much. Sorry, there's a strange echo, but I just want to thank you so much, Andrew, for that. It was like the template going forward, and I'll share that. And if you can, just as an aside from the interview, if you can share that piece of writing, I haven't seen that before, that Bodhisattva vow.
It's actually it's in my Essential Mystics. It's my most favorite quotation in the Buddhist section, and you'll find it on page. I read it every day. I keep it.
Which book is it?
I did the Essential Mystics for Harper's, and it's in the Buddhism section.
I'll find it.
And it's on page 76.
Okay.
And then the other great, extraordinary quote, which I beg all Buddhists listening to memorize, is from Vimalakirti, and it's in Bob Thurman's matchless translation. And it says of the Bodhisattva, I'll say she generates the love that is firm, its high resolve unbreakable like a diamond, the love that is pure, purified in its intrinsic nature, the love that is even, its aspirations being equal, the saint's love that has eliminated its enemy. The saint's love that has eliminated its enemy. No enemy. No, I don't hate Trump. Trump is not my enemy. I'm agonizing about what he's doing. I want him to be held to justice. But more than him being held to justice, I long for the agony that has driven him to be this monster. I long for that to be healed. I pray for the healing of that.
Beautiful.
The Bodhisattva's love that continuously develops living beings, the love that is enlightenment because it is unity of experience, the love that is never exhausted because it acknowledges voidness and selflessness, the love that is morality because it improves immoral living beings. And so it goes on, page 77. This is, when you read those words, you realize just how milquetoast Buddhist teaching has become.
Yes.
It's lemonade. This is the most intense divine vodka ever.
Yes, this is like, sorry, I'm just got something odd going with my speakers that I'm just going to yeah, no, this is sort of like nuclear, what you're reading. It's nuclear.
It's nuclear, and it's
energy. Yes.
And it's the sublime core of authentic Buddhism. This is the real stuff.
Yeah, yes.
And there is no way out of that. When I took the Bodhisattva vows in Ladakh with my teacher, my great Buddha of a teacher, Tukse Rinpoche, he sat us all in his small, crumbling, ancient study, and he said, "Look, he said, you better be aware of what you're taking on. And I was only 30, I was trembling, my God, he was saying, and he was looking very serious. He said, don't take these vows if you're not aware of what you're taking on. Don't just think, oh, I'll take the Bodhisattva vows today with a great teacher and that will ensure my private liberation. He said, that's not it at all. You are taking on the most difficult, the most heroic, the most transformative imaginable vows, and you have to take them in awe and trembling.
Wow.
And you have to take them really begging for the grace to be even partially worthy of.
Right. Oh, Andrew, this is so helpful. This is like such medicine. You're handing back the teachings to me and through this conversation that many will hear to give us a way through. This is the way through.
This is the way through.
That we have to, and then to connect it with the lineage, connect it with all these beings. They don't necessarily even be called Buddhist,
No, the prophet, peace be upon him, Jesus. We
Jesus.
have these
I've been thinking
stupendous
about
examples.
Jesus, who is the Bodhisattva. I've been thinking about his resist not evil.
Right.
And this is really what we're talking about, is it not?
Right, because I think at the deepest level, Jesus knew that resisting evil would contaminate you with evil. It doesn't mean that you don't do everything as he so shatteringly bravely did to counter evil. But remember the words of the I Ching, the wisest words ever written, don't resist evil, but make energetic progress in the good. Use the horror of what's exploding out there not to get paralyzed and depressed and despondent, but to get so much more serious than you've ever been about your own inmost practice and your own sacred action, because by deepening your practice and being braver about your action, you make energetic progress in the good, and that heals the evil.
Yes.
It's the only force that can.
Yes, it's not something that we need to do or can do, but we can be a conduit through the prayer, through the real meaning of mindfulness, to turn the mind back into the deathless heart.
Right.
That deathless heart is deeply, our teacher Ajahn Chah called the living Dharma. It's deeply connected to this fountain of guidance and truth, and to let that guide us, and to let that mysterious power in this universe, which is unfathomably enormous, unfathomably undying, to heal wherever.
Right.
But we, in the Kogi peoples of Colombia, this is a peoples in the high Sierra Madre Mountains that were never colonized, and about them, but they talk about our job as being, our mind is being used by this intelligence they call Aluna, the Great Mother, for healing, for putting back in order and back in harmony. So then it's anattara in the truest sense of the word.
Right.
It's like allowing ourselves to be a conduit, and meeting that with this real mindful point of attention and prayerfulness and deep receptivity and deep listening, through which then transformation can happen. So this is like our consciousness then becomes a point of transformation for this work.
And not just our consciousness, because if you go back to the Bodhisattva vow, the Bodhisattva is not only awake in this divine consciousness, the Bodhisattva is relentlessly working in sacred action to transform the planet, to transform the world. The Dalai Lama's schedule would make a 17-year-old want to go into rehab.
That's true. It's, right action is part of the Eightfold Path. The Buddha's right action, he was out there trying to stop wars, he was guiding generals, he was overturning the caste system, he was overturning animal sacrifice, He went and
Absolutely.
stopped Angulimala, the most fearsome serial killer of that time.
I love that. That's my favorite. Why are you always running, Angulimala? Why can't you stop at
Yeah.
that moment when in your book you make the point that, and it's so well taken, that the Buddha, like Jesus, was a social and political revolutionary.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why they tried to kill him. Devadatta tried to kill him 3 times, and there were many other attempts on his life because he wasn't simply doing the usual guru thing, sitting on a cushion and saying, "We will all get to unity consciousness and all will be well." He was critiquing everything in terms of the revelation of emptiness and equality that he'd been given.
Which was extraordinary at that time. And how did this piece get lost in the transmission of the Dharma?
Well,
How did
through exactly what you said, through the fact that Buddhism became allied with power, as it got lost in Christianity. When Constantine made Christianity the core religion of the Roman Empire, he gutted the Christ consciousness from it, because the Christ consciousness is love in action, and the Bodhisattvic consciousness is compassion in action. But the powers that be want the love and the compassion, but not the action, and they don't want much of the love either. Isn't that what happened? Yeah.
that is exactly what happened. The alliance with power and the lack of courage that it takes to take the leaps one needs to take for the spirit, and trust that one will be met in those leaps, and not to keep falling back on the structures of safety. And isn't that what this time is about? Those structures of safety are being stripped away at great speed. And so
there's a great blessing in that.
Hmm.
There's a huge blessing in that. The illusions are being incinerated. The safeties are being incinerated. These corrupt alliances between spirituality and power are all breaking down. And you can scream and howl and fall on the floor if you want. It's of no use to do that. Why don't you take the amazing opportunity of that to get finally far more serious than you've ever been about sacred practice and the sacred action that flows from it naturally? Then you will be liberated, and you'll liberate others, and energetic progress in the good will be made. And who knows that if enough of us do that in that spirit, how a force of transformation can be born that will birth a new world out of the ashes of the old. We don't know that that's certain. It's not certain, but because we have to do it. But if we do it, it will become amazing.
Yeah, I really see the potential for alignment, particularly across faith traditions, to
Yes.
embody this piece and to do actions together from this consciousness.
Well, what's so wonderful what you said, because one of the things that I've been doing in the last 30 years is really being initiated into all the major traditions. But what I found in all of them is that they have a vision of precisely this kind of sacred action fueled by sacred practice and sacred consciousness. Islam has it in the absolutely glorious and amazing life of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And he's the supreme sacred activist. He was a king, a warrior, a mystic of the highest order, a prophet, a beautiful human being, unbelievable majesty and completeness. Jesus, when you see Jesus naked, so to speak, your breath is taken away. There is a completely awake, embodied divine human giving everything in the most radical and beautiful and holy way and transformative way. You see it at the heart of the great Kabbalists. They're great fusion of the deepest mystical consciousness with a radical vision of harmony and justice for all beings, including animals. You see it in Kabir, of all people, Kabir, who woke up to being engoldened to the next stage of human evolution, this engoldenment of mind and heart and soul and body. And what did he do? He didn't become rich. He was a poor beaver. He just gathered everybody around. He sang in Hindi so that everybody could get it, the cigarette sellers and the boatmen and the burners of the dead. And they adored him because they knew that he didn't feel superior to them. He knew that what had happened to him could happen to them. And he cried out against animal sacrifice, against the caste system, against all the fancy schmancy rosaries and fakerama of the gurus. And those are the people that we need to be guided by. And they're not depressed.
Yeah.
They're not despondent. They're alive with calm joy because they know they're divine and they know what the divine is asking of them. And that is to give away everything all the time in clear, wise inner being and clear, wise outer action. It is really as simple as that, although enacting it is very hard. And it is time that we brought all these visions of sacred action together in one calm but monumentally passionate commitment to putting love and truth into action on every level in the world. And if we can do that, then we'll realize the secret meaning of this crisis, that it is a global dark night, but it has come to birth us into the next level of our potential evolutionary greatness, a humble, grand, tender, funny, wise embodiment of the divine here on earth. And we will either do it or not. If we don't do it, we will die out. If we do it, and my life is dedicated to this, we do it, then there'll be a new human race, new wine in new bottles, and we will be so amazingly changed, chastened by tragedy, humbled by horror, awakened to our true nature, and given the ideal and rich fusion of deep practice and real action, which has always been the truth of the real divine human life. So let's get on with it.
Andrew, you're a real jewel. You're a real jewel in this time.
Thank you.
You're a real beloved friend to so many of us. And you're a beautiful guide. And I thank you so much for your inspiration, your affirmation, your encouragement, and your vision, which is exactly right on. Thank you so much. And I just want to say, not that this will go out, the other night I was journeying with the grandmother, the one that we find down in the Amazon, who is a taskmaster.
She is.
And a brutal ass kicker. But she brought you to me and I could hear how the divinities love you so much. They are so rejoicing in you. There were just layers and layers and sort of mansions of divinities, and they just love your heart and they love your devotion and how fiercely you've spoken to it, and they're waiting for you with such joy and such welcome. They recognize you so profoundly. So she asked me to tell you that.
Thank you, sweetheart. It is at the time I was born for, and I'm coming together in a new way. I'm less fierce, but I'm more focused. I know the truth of what I'm talking about because it's happening to me, and I beg you to get this book in Golden Month so that we can do that and get this out to the Buddhists who need it too.
I'm just waiting for it. It's you can only get it on Amazon. I looked around and
no, it's because I published it myself because I didn't want anybody else to get that sticky little fingers on it, you know.
Well, it's coming, and I'm looking forward to it. It might even arrive today, but.
The second thing I want to ask you, sweetheart, is if I'm teaching this global immersion, and I would be so thrilled if you could do a Kuan Yin ceremony for us in this global immersion with Kittisaro.
Absolutely.
How long would it take? Would it take an hour or two?
It takes 1 hour, 15 minutes.
That, and then we will have a discussion after it with the people.
Also, we can, I'd like to send you the new version that you can listen to that's been put to sacred music. I think you will really like it.
I can't wait. And we could also, if you wouldn't mind, send that to everybody.
Yes, we can.
This will probably come in the next 3 or 4 months, and I really want to give that to everyone. And what I would love to do too is during this year, I'd love to do a Saturday for my group and your group and the Buddhists and everybody on precisely what we've been talking about. And we would do it on the Bodhisattva and sacred activism.
Absolutely.
And what it means for us, and what it means for you. And we could then also have the Kuan Yin ceremony as part, ending that.
Yes.
So you and I would do the Bodhisattva in the morning.
Yeah.
And then the Kuan Yin ceremony in the afternoon, and that would get out to all sacred activists everywhere, so they could have that for their.
Perfect. And we've really honed this now. It's good to go. We've got all of the mantra, the material, the meaning of the mantra.
Perfect.
We've done a lot of work, shaped it up. It's in the sound. It's very good, and that would be such an honor. Have you got 2 minutes? I just wanted to play you when you.
Please do send our conversation to all the Buddhist teachers.
I will.
And Jack Cornfield especially, because Jack, it's time for Jack to. He's such a marvelous man, but he's in such a funk always. It's time for them to hear what I'm saying. It's time for them to get off their cushions and speak the truth to people. And I would.
Well, your words. I'll send them. I'll have this piece added on to the Buddhist teachers.
Please, because they need to hear it. I have great respect for many of them, but come along, girls and boys. Yeah, I'm listening, darling. I've just got to stand because of my sciatica. So speak to me, sweetheart.
Yes, I'm going to play you. This is from the 1000s. This is from a teacher who's hang on a sec, who I will find the name of that. He's a Rinpoche. Anyway, my friend who's an Afrikaans put it to this musical score, and it's the 8 verses of the Liberated Mind. It's well known in the Tibetan tradition. I think you'll like it very much, and I'll find the verses for you.
Thank you, my darling.
Okay, I'm just going to screen share that so you can hear the musical score as I find the.
Give me the will to accomplish the highest welfare for all sentient beings who are more precious than the wish-granting gem. May I think myself the lowest of them all, and hold the other as supreme in the depths of my heart, in the depths of my dear, as if I have found a precious treasure. When others out of envy treat me badly, worth abuse, slander, and the like, may I suffer the defeat and offer the victory to them. If someone whom I have helped and I have placed great trust, hurts me very badly, may I hold them dear as my supreme Guru. May I directly and indirectly offer benefit and happiness to all beings. May I secretly take upon myself the harm and suffering of others, my mothers. May all this remain undefiled by the stains of the worldly concerns. May I perceive it, alter myself illusive, unattached, be delivered from bondage, samsara.
You know what I would love
Mm.
is that our conversation ended and you put the words on and you asked, you know, you can ask everyone to just take in what we've been saying and listen to this music with those 8 liberation
Verses.
stanzas. I love that. And the words are perfect, unabashed.
Yes, yes.
That's the way through.
Yeah.
Unabashed, focused, adamantine compassion and accent.
Beautiful. I will do that, and I'll send you a copy. I'll send you the words. I'll send you all the Guan Yin material for the ceremony,
Please, darling.
and I will be there to back you up when whatever you're doing, and we'll continue in our conversation and continue to be allies at this time.
Yes, we will. And be of good cheer. Do not let that. There is no time for terror, darling. It's much too late for terror. It is too late for terror. Everything that you're terrified of is going to happen. It's all going to get very much worse. So if you have terror now, it will be magnified. It will just be a seed that will grow into a terrible tree.
Yes.
Just give it up.
Yes.
This is it. You don't need it. You are one of the most naturally awake people. You're one of the very few I've met. You are a bodhisattva. Claim that and have the lightness and the playfulness and the gentleness that is so much, the penetrating, ruthless gentleness that you is your nature. Don't be waylaid by anything but that.
Thank you so much.
You know what I'm saying?
I do. And I
The
thank you
terror
for
is,
we
how
can't
can you help if you're terrified?
no, we can't afford it.
It's no, because if you just allow it, it will grow into hysterical and unspeakable proportions given what's about to unfold.
Yes.
It's going to get unbelievably worse. So we've got to get unbelievably clearer and calmer and more penetrating and more unabashed in our love in action. That's it. That's it.
Yes. Yes.
You
That's
know that. You know that better than anybody.
well, I forget, like all of us. I
Like
forget.
all of us, but we can't afford to forget if we're going to be the teachers that we need to be.
Yes. Thank you so
And
much.
give my love to Kitty-Saro,
You'll see him next
my
time.
buddy,
Yes.
my English buddy. I love him so. And play him it. I'd love to know what he feels about what I said.
Oh, he'll love it. He'll be so thrilled about the Kuan Yin. He's going to deepen in the monastery around the Kuan Yin practice. He does a lot on the subtle realms. He's praying all the time, and he does these very long mantras connected with Kuan Yin's Shurangama Sutra, which is the foundational sutra of Zen, where Kuan Yin, there's a long, long mantra about protecting this realm. So he does that every day. He does it
That would be so
108
wonderful.
times. It
God.
took him 36 hours the other day. I mean, that's Kitty-Saro. So he's putting out stuff on that level.
That is, and would you please ask him to include me in his prayers when
I
he
will.
does it, and to do one for me and for the work that I'm doing? I would be so honored.
Absolutely.
Because that would really help. I mean, we need a lot of protection and help at this moment. I've just had a healing session with somebody in Brazil, and she said that the sciatica is the result of you taking in so much of this suffering, and you've got to have protection on every level now, and you do too.
Yes.
And the more protection we have, the more buoyant and unabashed we can be.
That's wonderful, Andrew.
Love you, darling.
You will be in his daily prayers on that.
I really beg, because I have such love for him and such admiration of his heroic soul.
Yes.
I know he is a genuine, I don't know what the word would be, but he's one of the very few people who shouldn't come out of prayer.
Right.
That's he's doing what he was meant to do.
Yes.
And he's doing it with that heroic focus that is bodhisattvic.
And he says it's getting clearer and more powerful and stronger. Yeah.
I believe, and it's such a wonderful backup for you.
Yes.
Because if he's doing that, then you can concentrate on your Athena-like fierce truth.
Yes.
And really set the leopard among the pigeons, because you've got that gift. You are completely heartbroken and you're completely focused.
That's true.
Yeah, I love you, darling.
Love you too. Stay well, my love.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.